Hey there, I'm Sharon.
And I'm Désirée.
And this is the Other What podcast.
This is the Other What podcast.
The Other What.
The Other What.
The Other What. The Other One.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us again for another Other What podcast. Today's one of the kind of a cool little topic that me and Désirée have always been kind of tossing around, especially when we started talking about dating.
Yes.
And started like comparing notes on like who we date and why we date them, right? And who we've ended up with and things like that. And one of the themes that just came out immediately when we started talking, other than Desiree's amazing mojo, is that I only date white women. Have only dated white women. I mean, I had a Filipino boyfriend, but he doesn't count because he's a boy.
Right. He's
but
not a woman.
All my ladies have been white, and right. And Désirée only dates women of color, and
Yes.
we were like, "What? That is so crazy! What's going on there?" So we decided to dedicate a whole podcast to kind of talk about that and talk about what is it because of our backgrounds, because the way we were brought up, what is that about, and just kind of dive into it. So Désirée, why don't you kind of take us through like your, why you believe like, me and you have such interesting dating profiles.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sharon, about just the environments we grew up in. My environment was mostly people of color. Even like the schools I went to, just activities I did outside of school, it was always majority Black environments. And so that was just who I was exposed to. I wasn't really around a lot of white folks. We did have a few white students in my high school, but other than that, just, out of high school, the jobs I worked at were typically Black-owned businesses. Even when I worked in the federal government for a while, my manager was a Black woman. So I was still kind of in this same environment. Whereas I know for you, that's opposite of how I grew up, right?
Yeah, totally. And I actually didn't even have a female manager until like my second job.
Wow.
Like most of my managers, my entire career, in the working world, which we should probably do a podcast about that, have all been white men.
Mm-hmm.
And the office is primarily white. And then obviously I grew up in a very white community down in Conyers. And the only time I would hang out with people of color was when I was forced to go to Chinese school.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to hang out with Asians, and I never got along with them very well.
Mm-hmm.
And like I really didn't get exposed to really to like Black communities until I lived in East Point. And I did that. I did that deliberately because I wanted to live in a place that was very different. And boy, my parents like brains like exploded. Like, why are you living in East Point? That is like, because it was so foreign to them, but I loved it. I thought it was like one of the best places I've ever lived. And East Point got a bad rap, especially back in the 2000s. And it was one of the safest places I have ever lived in Atlanta, ever. People took care of you.
Yeah.
There was community. I really loved it. So, but yeah, like, I think you're right. And I think that's, for me, I connect more with the white culture. And I think that's why I ended up dating white women. The other reason that I think there is because, and this is kind of a lot of my Asian American friends growing up, my Asian queer friends, is that our parents wanted us to marry white men.
Right.
So we ended up marrying white women. And then remember that curly hair thing that we talked about a few episodes ago? It's so weird because when I'm like, I have a couple of queer Asian friends, both of them married white women with curly hair. I'm telling you, like, I think that all permeated from like the success perms and, hey, you need to learn how to eat salad because white people eat salad. Like we were kind of taught to be white. if you
That's
think about it,
amazing.
is really weird. But that's kind of what happened. And I think that's kind of why I end up just dating white ladies. Is what
Yeah,
happens too.
I mean, I've been around a few, but I've never been like I got to get that. And it's not because you know, I don't find some of them attractive. Some of them are very attractive. But it's just not been my flavor, so to speak. Like, I like somebody that kind of understands what the struggle could be, and you know, maybe have come from their own bit of struggle. My parents used to always tell us to date somebody of a similar background as you. I've not always done that, but I have typically stayed with dating a person of color. Majority of women I've dated have all been Black. It doesn't matter the complexion. Like, I'm not color struck to that. But I've dated a couple Hispanic women. I dated one Chinese woman, and that's been it. There was one story that I'll share that when I thought there was, because you know, I do this versatile soft stud where I like to sometimes look very femme, and I went through like a really bad breakup, and I thought, you know what, I should just get a white girlfriend. Let me find a butch white woman, and maybe I need to switch it up.
No
And,
way.
and
No way.
I went on one date, Sharon, one date that didn't
Whoa.
result in any kissing, no hand holding. And like a couple of days later, I had a very nice time. We went to like a softball game, very gay. Then we went out to dinner.
So gay. Oh my God. That's right. You make fun of me for being so gay. You totally get gay points for that
Right.
one.
So that was nice. And then like a couple of days later, she calls, she wants to hang out. And I'm like, well, this weekend's not great because I've got friends coming in town because I was visiting family in Savannah. And this woman like is calling me, which is so annoying, especially because we just met, ma'am. And has invited herself to hang out with me and my friends. Now, Savannah is large but small enough, and the gay community there is even smaller, and the amount of places that you can go, like gay clubs, is even smaller. I think we're maybe down to 2 down there now, where there's one big one called Club One. I'll never forget. Myself and 2 of my friends, one who was a Georgia State trooper, we were having some drinks, watching a drag show. And of course, this woman decides she's coming. She's like shit-faced.
No.
And I was like, please, let's just like, she comes downstairs. She's looking for me. She's like being very confrontational. And I was like, hey, you're drunk. Let's just talk about this tomorrow. Like, why don't you just call me tomorrow? Let's not make a scene. I'm going back to my friends. She just could not let it go, Sharon. I had to get security to ask her to leave me alone.
Oh my God.
And then, and I feel like I'm leaning into the camera for people who can't see because it's so unbelievable.
Crazy.
Sharon, as security is taking her out of the club, she's yelling my name. She's like, Désirée, you're going to let them take me out of here. How can you do this to us? And I was like, girl, I just met you. Like, no, ma'am.
Oh
and
my
she's
God.
yelling and yelling. And the security takes her out, and I'm like, okay, fine. I go back downstairs to my friends. We're laughing about it. I go back up because we're now leaving. It's been about 2 hours later. We're leaving. The police officer was like, we didn't arrest her because she's in the military. That could cause some trouble for her. We told her to go home. Do you know this chick was leaning against my car when we got out of the club?
Oh my God, like in front of your door so you couldn't get into your car?
Well, on the passenger side.
Oh, but
just
still.
like leaning up against my little Jetta.
Oh, no.
Wait, then, but I'm a couple of blocks away so I can see her. Then one for some reason, one of my sisters happened to also be out, and I was telling her what was going on. She took off her heels and like ran to my car and got all in this woman's face and was like, you know, with some choice words, but basically told her like, leave Desiree the fuck alone.
Whoa.
And the girl was like, I'm so sorry. I just want to talk to her. She's like, she already told you she didn't want to talk to you. She told you to talk to her tomorrow. You know, when you sobered up, you need to get out of here. And then my friend who was a police officer was like, lady, you need to leave. And she does. I get home and just like in the bed, like, what the fuck just happened here?
That is insane.
It's so crazy. So she does call me the next day, and I was like, you know, this is not going anywhere, right? And so
I'm surprised you even answered the phone call, man.
I like people to have some type of closure.
Ah, that's nice of
And
you.
plus, I think you also, I feel like if somebody does something that, you know, makes you uncomfortable or messes up, you should let them know. Like, don't have them just thinking, oh, you just stopped talking to them and they don't have a reason why, because folks need to know, because you can't improve. You can't be better for, you know, going forward. If maybe she didn't think she had a drinking problem. Maybe me saying, girl, you had way too much. Like, this is not how you should be acting. So that was my one attempt at thinking maybe I'll get a white girlfriend. You know, just that was like in probably 2001-ish, 2002. And then
you never went back. You're like, those white girls, they crazy.
And she was so cute though, Sharon. She was so cute. And I thought, all right, I found one, but
done. It's not gonna happen. Oh my God, Desiree. I love it's like the one time and you're like, F that. No more white ladies. I'll see y'all later.
Ruined it for everybody.
Everybody. Done. Yeah. Oh man. All right. So we're gonna take a little break and come back and talk a little bit more about this, and right after this quick little break. Everybody, and we're back. So Desiree, something that I really wanted to double click on from something you said just when we just talked, was something that your parents told you, right? Always date somebody with a similar background. And I think that's like super interesting. Not just on who you date, but also the friend groups that you end up hanging out with, the people you connect with, your chosen family, right? In a way. I'd love to kind of dive into that and really dive into what you think about that from a similar background thing, because like we were just talking about me and you. We never met until we met, you know, on the app, but we have similar backgrounds, but we still would have never met because our friend groups would never mesh.
Right.
And so,
we never intersected.
So backgrounds being one thing, but also just like time and space seems to also be that piece as well. So, do you want to like maybe talk a little bit about that and about like the different cultural backgrounds, and then we can kind of go from there?
Sure. Yeah. So I think for my parents, my parents were really hopeful that all of their kids went to college. Because they also met in college, they really wanted us to like meet our person in college so that, you know, we could have all the years that they have had and that their parents had and their parents had together. Which, I mean, I get that sounds lovely, but that's not everybody's path of going to college. I did go to several colleges, but didn't finish until I was in my mid-30s. So right there, that kind of eliminates a lot of people with a similar background, because I don't know, outside of the friends I made when I went back to college, I don't know a lot of people that went back to college, especially women's college, you know, later in life. I also think it's because my dad, you know, is a dentist, and his father was a dentist. His grandfather was a dentist. We've got other physicians in the family, lawyers in the family. And that also comes with providing you a certain lifestyle. And so your parents, at least my parents, didn't want us to be in relationships that would have us living less than what we grew up with.
Oh, wow.
And so we
Yeah.
didn't, we went through periods, especially me being the oldest, and my dad was just finishing dental school right after I was born. It's not like they had tons of money and they could do a bunch of stuff. But as we got older and he got more successful in his business, and then my mom decided to go back to school. My mom had a degree in computer engineering or computer programming, but then decided to go back to school and get her bachelor's in dental hygiene. So she works at the office with my dad.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. And so, then that helps you kind of you create your own schedule because you're your own boss, right? You're this entrepreneur. And we got to do so many cool things as kids that, other women that I've met never got to experience. So I think the biggest takeaway for me from that is just, finding somebody that can meet you where you are, that understands kind of where you grew up. Because I think I've mentioned this in another podcast. Like, we did things like equestrian camps and tennis camps, where there's been people that I've met that could not even fathom doing stuff like that because they didn't grow up like that. Maybe they grew up in a single parent home where their grandparents raised them, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not my experience. So I don't know I haven't been able to relate to that a lot, even though I have definitely dated my fair share of folks that came from those type of backgrounds. But it's just, I think it's just, like I said, I think it's just my parents wanting us to just have some opportunities in life that, if we decided to be with other people who didn't grow up with those backgrounds, it might be a little bit harder, a little more of a struggle. And, your folks never want you to struggle, even though struggle is necessary for growth. But it's just different levels of struggle.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's so and I learned so much though when I've dated people that come from different backgrounds, and it even at times makes me really, really appreciate how I was raised, and the experiences I got to have, places I got to travel. Like my family, because there's so many of us, we took a lot of road trips. So even from that, like, I learned how to read a map. My dad would call me his navigator. Even back in the day when MapQuest was out,
Right.
I could tell you how to get around Atlanta without ever having to get on the highway. And so my family jokingly still calls me MapQuest. They'll call me like, "Hey, I'm at this intersection in here. How do I get to, over here?" And I can guide them without having to look at a map of how to get there.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I would say that I think that there's something to say. There's definitely something about similar backgrounds. For me, I think it's almost elevated on similar values. So I feel like sometimes you can have different backgrounds, but similar values, and you can
That's a great
still
point.
make the relationship work. Because I think that's something that I'm learning. This is not like something that I've like used in the past, because what I've always done is I actually tried to find opposites. Like, I always thought opposite was right. Like the whole opposites attract and opposite that. And so I'd find somebody with a completely opposite background of me. I did not take your parents' advice. I wish they had given me that advice. Did not do that. So I would look for somebody completely opposite, thinking that I would, like you said, you'd learn so much from them, you could help each other. But what the problem wasn't the backgrounds that were opposite. It was that my values were opposite. And that does come from different backgrounds, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is definitely also, I think people can have different backgrounds, but similar values, because they've maybe matured or grown up, or they're in a part of their lives that's like similar at that point too. So I think that's where a lot of a lot of the people that I've dated, I didn't do so well in some cases, and I did okay in others. And I think because I'm learning now, I'm doing better than I have been in the past, really focusing on the values versus on like, anything else. I will say my biggest
Say,
thing
please do.
is, man, I need to date women with a full-time job.
Yeah.
That is my number one right now.
Right.
And we had this on the list of like possible podcasts, but I have that savior syndrome so bad.
Yeah.
And dude, no more ladies without jobs.
Right.
Ladies, if you want to sign up, you got to have a job first. That's like on your resume. Like
Yes.
it's
Can
gotta
you pay your
happen.
own rent or
Yes.
your own mortgage?
Your own mortgage. Can you pay half of the bill when we go to the restaurant? Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know it sounds so funny, but like it is something that like, I think like the backgrounds thing that we talked about, I think there's
Yeah.
something to be said about that too. Cause you could still come from a 2-family household. You could still have a college degree and then just not be
Yeah.
able to like pay your way through anything.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a
So
value thing. What do you value?
I
Right.
was
From
going to
that.
ask you, what are your top values that you look for, like, or just top 2 values that you like to find in a partner?
That's a big one. Other than like having a full-time job. That's not a value.
Yes.
That's a resume filler. Check.
Right.
Okay. There are check boxes. I mean, I think, wow, that's a really hard question for me because I think there are so many that kind of fled to the top, especially now that I am understanding that I was raised a different way than the way that I interact with all of my chosen family in the Western world. I think like a lot of what we said in our last podcast, Desiree, that you had before, like affection, kindness. Oh my God, kindness would
Yeah.
be is like a number one thing for me right now. And somebody like supportive. I don't know what the word is for that, but somebody who like elevates you, who can
Yes.
really who uplifts you rather than puts you down. Whatever that value is, I think those are like my top 3 right now. And I think values change over time and as you learn more about yourself and everything, but for me those are essential because they also help me feel safe. And I
Yeah.
think safety maybe is my number one. I need to
Oh, I
feel
love that.
safe in a
Yeah.
relationship. And those 3 things kind of support that number one.
I like that.
Okay, what about you?
For me, I really, because I am very like heavy into my family, like even some of my close friends are really like cousins because we just, my mom used to always say, you don't need friends if you have family, because you grow up with these people and they do become like your friends. And so people who value their family, I love spending time with my family, even when they get on my nerves, and even when I get on their nerves, we still want to be together. So I need somebody who, they don't necessarily have to, well, that's a lie. I would like for them to have a good relationship with their family, but I understand that certain circumstances prevent that from happening. But can they have a healthy, productive relationship with my family? Because I'm going to be around them. And if I'm with that person and I love you, I'm going to want you to be a part of that world. Also, just how they treat their friends. That's important to me.
That's a good one.
Yeah. How do you have friends, first of all? Because I have met some women who don't have any friends.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's a red flag to me.
That's a red flag. I agree with you. You want to we should do a red flag episode. That's a red flag for sure. Like when you don't have any friends, that is really strange.
Yeah, because you can't have my friends. Like these are I'm coming in with my own group. Sharon. You can mingle with them. They will maybe give you their phone number. Maybe we'll have a group chat with you within that. But these are my people. If something happens, all of these folks are going with me because they came with me. So I need you to come in with your own set of friends, that you can go to and talk shit about me when you need to, or if I've pissed you off. Like, that's healthy. That's how you kind of clear out some things and then come back and we can talk. But yeah, you got to have your own set of friends, and then we can make friends together, which is fine. But like my friends and my family are so important to me. And the kindness is probably my other value. Like you mentioned earlier, like I love somebody that's kind, that's thoughtful, non-selfish, And then somebody that's also open to new experiences. I don't know if that's really a value, but those are the kind of things that I really look for.
I think that last one's like curiosity, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's curious, like let me go try this, or
Yeah.
I love that too. I think that's a really good one. And I would say the kindness thing, I remember this from the dating apps, was that people would say that they would see how you treated like the service staff at a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant. That says a lot about your kindness. Are you
Yeah.
an asshole about because the bread came late or something? Or are you going to be kind to this person because they're freaking busy and maybe they're new and you don't know their story, right? And like
Right.
there's a kindness to that about just being able to treat strangers, I
Yeah.
think.
I
How
think
kind
that's
are
a
you
maturity
strangers?
thing too. When you just also start to realize, like you said, like you never know what's going on in somebody's life. They could have just gotten a phone call, that something traumatic happened, or maybe they didn't get the internship or the other job they were looking for, or get into the, a program they wanted to get
That's
into. You
right.
just
That's
never
right.
know what happens. So I try to be mindful of that. I definitely can get a little snooty if stuff is late to a table, but there's like it takes a lot for me to get there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I've done the whole like
Yeah.
sending stuff back to the
Yeah.
to the to the kitchen and everything, but there is a kindness that I have for like for service people, and I think that also is because of my dad. Right, 35
Hmm.
years being in a Chinese restaurant, like
Yeah.
he was busting his ass and like working for tips, and
Hmm.
I definitely identify with that. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit back to, dating people of color or people color, like, and or really just talking about just our experiences trying to bridge the gap between
Hmm.
races, right? We talked a little bit about me moving to East Point and how I met like a lot of people there. But Desiree, you've got an awesome story that I would love for our listeners to hear about one of your experiences about, you know, hanging out with white people. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was, as I mentioned earlier, like I've gone to several different colleges, starting from when I was 18. I think by the time I graduated with my bachelor's, I had attended 6 different undergrads, and I ended up at Agnes Scott, which is outside of Atlanta. It was a women's college. And I went there because I decided to become a women's studies major. And I knew I wanted to move back to Georgia for a little bit. And they gave me the most scholarship money. So there we go.
But good for
Because
you. That's awesome.
it's expensive to go to private colleges.
Super expensive. Good for you,
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah. So I took some queer studies classes as a part of my women's studies curriculum. And oftentimes I was older than the professor, and I was definitely the oldest person in class. I think I took maybe one class where there was somebody a little bit older than me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So in my queer studies 101 class, I also realized I was the only person of color in this particular class. And just like listening to these young white women talk about like what they're struggling with, and so they were super sensitive to like language, and it was the first time that dawned on me, and I was about 33, 34. I was like, I don't have any white friends, and I cannot relate to any of these things that these folks are complaining about, because my experience as a person of color is so different that the stuff they're complaining about just seemed so frivolous, like different. I can't even think of an example of some of the words. Some like something in the textbook like had people up in arms, and it might have even been talking about people of color. I think it was like colored versus Negro, like one of those things. And I was like, should they even have an opinion on this? Because it doesn't really affect them.
That is so, oh my God, that is so interesting. Do you
Yeah.
feel like as people of color, we've been kind of, people will like talk at us when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to race, right? Either calling us something or making fun of us, and we're just used to it.
Right.
Whereas, like, no offense, we love our white listeners. We love you guys so much. And you know how much I love white ladies, so please don't
Yeah.
be mad at us. But like white people don't have to worry about that as much, right?
Right.
So super interesting. This was a long time ago. The first time, this was the crazy lady that I first started dating. She started making comments about getting Chinese takeout and eating Chinese when she was dating me. Right? And so she made those jokes, and then I just didn't think anything of it. And I was like, ha ha ha. But wow, is that like kind of degrading? Like
Right.
not such a nice thing to say, but
Right.
I just kind of let it go, because I had been hearing stuff like that my whole life, right? I get a lot
Yeah.
of go
You
back
get
to your you
desensitized
get
to it
desensitized.
sometimes.
Yeah. I got a lot of go back to your own country when I was like little, tons of that growing up. And you do. Even though that was like not such a nice thing to say, I was like, haha, no big deal. And then you go to this class and they're like so up in arms about stuff,
Yeah.
and you're like, but guys, we've been hearing this for like the
Right.
last 20 years of our lives. What's the big
Right.
fucking deal, right?
I'm like, you all are so sensitive. If you are going to get this worked up in this class over stuff that is so minute, like, I don't know how y'all are going to make it outside of this. Because Agnes was such a safe space, probably too safe. And like, these folks, they just didn't understand like what it really meant to like be a person of color, and even be a queer person, because not everybody in that class was queer. It was just an interesting experience for me. And
Wow,
especially just realizing you don't have any white friends. Like, how have you managed to go through life and be 33, 34 and not have any white friends? And it wasn't
that's kind of
intentional.
amazing. Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that, like, but I think it's also amazing the fact that you realized it too.
Yeah.
Like, maybe there's a lot of people out there who actually don't have any white friends,
Maybe.
and
And
don't even know.
like my siblings and our experiences are different with that, because two of my sisters are married to white men.
Oh.
So obviously they had white friends growing up, but they also went to different schools than me. We didn't go to the same like high school. One of my younger siblings went to like a Jewish private school for a bit. So their reality was so much more different than mine. And I didn't have a lot of mixing and mingling, even work-wise. Like, I worked at a lot of Black-owned businesses. For the beginning of my career, I was mostly in medicine. So I worked in pediatrics. I worked in my parents' dental office for a little bit. I managed a couple of cosmetic medical spas, and they were all Black-owned businesses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I think it says a lot about being able to stay within a certain race comfort zone that you had. Like, you could do that in the United States, even though it's like a mixing pot of cultures and races. You were able to stay within that for quite a long time in your career.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I know when I hear like somebody white, or even other people I've met who didn't grow up around Black people, and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't meet any Black people till I went to college. And for the longest, that just sounded so crazy to me, until this revelation when I'm sitting in this class, and I'm like, shit, I am one of those people.
Wow.
Like, I have navigated my life I just don't have a lot of it wasn't crossing a lot of folks.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So
one more thing, Sharon.
Yeah.
Even like, I do have some white friends now, mostly have made from work, from my jobs that I've had. It's still not like me organically just meeting people, like I like to say, talking to ladies by the avocados. No, it's just like people I've worked with. I'm like, we've become friends.
Okay, first, I need to make a shout out about the avocados. It's definitely become a theme with some of my, I have these other group of friends, and we're all about throwing the avocados at the ladies. Yeah. Why can't we just throw the avocados at the ladies? Okay, let's shout out to that. I love the avocado thing. And then, but yeah, I think it's like so wow, it's just like so crazy. My first best friend in elementary school
Mm-hmm.
was a Black girl named Kia. I will never forget her. And we had so much fun together. And then my parents were like, you can't play with her anymore. And I was like, why? And I think it's because, and okay, people listening to our podcast, I mean, Asians are pretty racist, especially like older Asians. And that's kind of what happened. But she was like awesome and I loved her. And I think that kind of like made me want to have more friends who were Black, right? And it was harder though for me to make them because I hung out with all the white people. But I'm grateful for the people that I did end up, like my college roommate was Black, and but I think that they're far and few between for me, right? They're like smatterings versus like having groups of them, and I feel like it's kind of something that I've been missing from my life a little bit. That kind of color of literally color.
Yeah.
In my life.
Even going to like nightclubs here in Atlanta back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and now it's still pretty segregated. Like we still have nights at clubs that are like hip hop night, where that's when the majority of Black folks are going to come to that club on that night. And any other night, you don't have to advertise it as that because people just assume that's not the music you're going to play also.
That is so true. That is so true. There is that segregation on like, I remember going to certain like clubs. There were Black lesbian clubs versus the white lesbian clubs. And it still just keeps on going. Like we're still doing that still to today. It's crazy.
Atlanta, come on, get it together.
I know it.
We gotta make it a little bit more.
Totally. Well, thanks guys for listening. I think to me, this was like a super interesting conversation. I think there's a lot more that we could delve into this too, Désirée. Like so many other layers to, we're so different, but yet we're friends.
Yes.
So why can't we all, I'm going to do that, but why can't more people do this? And I don't know if it's like we said, a time, a space thing. I think we can cross cultures. I think we're just not like intermingling like we were saying before, like where we have those like collisions.
We have to be more intentional about it, and especially being older too, because like a lot of lesbians, most of our close friends are ex-girlfriends. So that doesn't really help us meet new people.
That's right.
So if you've only dated white women, all of your close friends are probably white, just like my close friends are all Black.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I have my smatterings of like Asian Americans, but they also all date white women. So then we're all surrounded by white women, and we have the smattering of Asian Americans here and there. So super interesting. Well, thanks guys for everybody for listening. Be sure to visit our website at theotherwhat.com.
Yes, and follow us on social media at The Other What on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And also, I think we've got some merch coming to our website. So go see what's there and support the podcast. Thanks so much, y'all.
Yeah, and if there's any feedback, let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if there's more stuff that you guys want us to talk about, let's do it. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Love ya.
For more The Other What, check out our other episodes. You can find those at theotherwhat.com. Have comments, thoughts, or reactions to something we said? Be sure to subscribe and comment. The Other What is a production of 559 Labs. The Other What is hosted by Sharon Go and Désirée Jamerson. This episode was produced and edited by Andrew Marconi. Music by Alexei Anisimov. It was recorded in Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next time.